Hello, and welcome to Memory Matters for All Ages. I'm Janelle Nichols from the Gables of Hudson Assisted Living Residence. I want to welcome back to the program Kathy Kilpatrick, a speech-language pathologist with over 44 years experience working with folks with a diagnosis of dementia, Alzheimer's, memory, cognitive issues, also with a lot of caregivers. Several years ago, Kathy and I worked on a program at Kent Ridge at Golden Pond, another assisted living residence in Kent, and we called it When Dementia Comes Home. We chose that name because at one point, dementia did come home to Kathy's home, and I know she has talked about that in the past. Kathy, you have worked with a lot of families with dementia in their family or with someone that they love, someone close to them, a friend, and that's what we're going to focus on today.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting. You look back on a career, it's kind of hard to realize I've been doing it for that long as I'm sorting out my house that I've been in for over 35 years with all the speeches and books and papers and coming across stuff, and it's like, this is what I'm supposed to be here doing at this point. To me, it's a privilege to work with these people who have the memory frustrations that may have them becoming more significant, and to try and give their families some tips. I mean, I just feel so at home with that. It's really important. And also the safety recommendations, because I don't think people realize that there's a lot that goes on, and in future programs we're going to talk about driving and medications and things regarding safety. And I want to help them walk the journey as I did with my mom. And I think the biggest part is I have so much to offer, you know, with the website, the books, and everything, but they are my teachers.
Right.
They are my teachers.
I think that's why the program that we had, When Dementia Comes Home, why it was so effective, and again, you touched so many people in that, is because you have been through it yourself. And to have someone that understands is just is priceless. I'm in my 9th year of working with families in the assisted living realm, and I have met people that view a diagnosis of dementia in completely different ways. Some people, usually a family member will come in first to tour and scout the place out and talk with me. And oftentimes they will tell me, no, we're just seeing a few little things. And then when they bring their loved one in, it is so much more, it is so much advanced. Then I meet families that are very realistic about it. Can you comment on that?
Absolutely. I think what I'd like to share today are some of the basics that I go through when I'm talking to families, or, you know, if I tell anybody what I do out socially, somebody has a story or a family member or a concern, and I am really willing to share with that. They'll say, you know, my mom's a little forgetful, or my grandfather, but their memory's fine. They can tell you everything that happened 25 years ago, and they have no problem. And maybe they forget what they had for breakfast. Well, I don't know that I remember what I had for breakfast the other day or care. But and so I understand that. But we're talking about long-term memory, and then we're talking about short-term memory and what we call working memory. And those are the things that are very important if you're going to be able to take your medications correctly, or if you're going to, you know, be able to handle your finances, making decisions regarding driving and all. So if someone is saying, you know, well, it's just old age, I encourage them, first of all, to go see their doctor, get a complete physical, and very often we'll recommend a geriatric assessment, because the best thing is to be proactive and get the information earlier. One, for safety, for moving them if it's at all possible or desired, and also long-term planning, because financially there are a lot of things that need to be considered. So that's one of the first things that I deal with. The second thing that I want to have them understand is sometimes you don't see the memory issues, but you see someone whose behavior has changed. So maybe they're just sitting like a bump on a log all the time and not doing anything. They used to be able to be self-motivated, and that doesn't seem to be happening. Or they become grouchier. And I remember a client I had once who he'd had a stroke, and that's why I was seeing him. And we were talking one day about emergency numbers, and he had them posted in the kitchen. And then I suggested he should have them by his bed in case something happened in the evening, because he lived alone. And then I asked him, just going through a brief assessment, and he just blew up. I mean, just really, really agitated. And the family said, he's been that way lately. So when I called to reschedule, he said, I'm sorry that I blew up at you. And I didn't say it was okay. I said, we'll talk about it later. Thank you. And in further questioning, here's what was happening. This man lived alone, and now everybody's coming in to check on him, which he appreciated, but it's annoying him and it's too much activity. Plus, when I started doing some things with him cognitively, when I asked questions, if they got harder or I went from one thing to another, he would start to feel real anxious. And so that's why we often just see the behavior things. And then I think the biggest thing is, if you've seen one person with dementia or Alzheimer's, you've seen one person. There's very basic information. The Alzheimer's Association is a great resource for that. But each individual, if we're going to try and help them, needs to be assessed and given strategies, and family needs education.
So not that old adage, when you've seen one, you've seen them all, is what you're saying.
Absolutely not.
I think you touched upon something. Circumstances can have something to do with dementia. Depression,
Absolutely.
grief, loneliness. I know that when my father passed away about 10 years ago, I thought I had lost my mind, and I know it was the grief process, but the mistakes that I was making, and I couldn't remember even the simplest things. I remember I would get in the car and I could not remember where I was going.
Right.
And then when I remembered where my destination was, I couldn't remember where to start out, which road to start out on to take. It was frightening, but I knew it was the grief that had taken over. So there are circumstances. That's why you look at everyone individually.
Right.
All right, Kathy, I know you have a few more tips for us on
Right.
the dementia. Why don't you continue?
Yeah. If you're concerned about someone and you think there may be something, with the memory, but you're not quite sure what, here's a few things that I think are really helpful. First of all, when you go to visit them, be present. We've got a technology age, and it's real easy in our busyness, and many of caregivers or family members are working and have their own families. We're doing a bunch of things at the same time, and we're with them, but we're not with them. And I think in walking the journey part that we talked about, if there is something significant going on, this is going to be a journey where things are going to change. And, if it progresses, that person may not know you. So it's really, about quality time. Leave your worries outside. If you have to take 5 minutes more in the car, go ahead and do that. But here are some tips when you're communicating with them. So often, matter of fact, I just talked to a therapist the other day, and who was seeing someone, not a speech pathologist, but another therapist, and she said she thought this person was fine cognitively, and they were conversing, and then she did a few other things, and she went, oh my goodness, there are some really significant things going on. So very often they can chit-chat very well, but they have more difficulty. So here's the thing. If you find mom or dad or your neighbor having some difficulties, slow down what you're presenting. And instead of going like the train track, do it like you're going up a ladder. So, I think we'd like to go out shopping today. Do you want to go here? Would you like to get lunch next? Instead of just this huge, long conversation. Because if they have a memory breakdown, they're not going to be able to process all of that, and they might just say, yeah, I don't want to. So slow down, because overload is a big thing. Face them, make sure they're hearing you because of the hearing loss issues. And the other thing is, if you're giving them information, and this can be a problem if it's over the phone, so you're going to have to find out a way. Write it down for them. How many times has someone said something to you, and if you don't jot it down yourself, as a working person or a person at home or a volunteer, you run into difficulties. And don't test them. Don't turn around and say, okay, now, yeah, your memory's fine. Where'd you live? What's your address? Where were you born? Because often naming problems are there just for normal aging. They get frustrated and they feel like, they're back in school again. So I think an honoring way is not to do that. And we talked about the withdrawal, type thing, and so it may be and we'll give you more suggestions in future programs about that. And also a memory board, which I use a lot, and that will be something that I'll explain, and I'll bring a sample one so we can look at that. Tweak what works, because I think there may be some changes going on for them. So
Okay.
those are some basics.
All right, so if I hear you correctly, to sum up, everyone's an individual, look at everyone individually. For a family member or a caregiver, be vigilant, be alert, don't ignore the signs.
Right.
And I do also like your comment about don't test them. Years ago, when I first entered into the assisted living realm, there was a standard test that was used, questions that the nurses would use to evaluate a potential resident how much cognitive care they would need. And in that, many of these questions I would have struggled with. Spelling things backwards and counting backwards from 100, things like that. And I would watch these folks become very agitated. I think there was embarrassment involved too when they struggled, because all of us sitting around a table, zeroing in on them, watching them, asking question number 1, question number 2. It was very nerve-wracking.
Well, it's all in the presentation.
Absolutely.
Because that,
absolutely.
excuse me, is a basic evaluation.
I know that
but
still is
I
used
know
in
when
many
I find, and I know
situations.
we're really ending on time here, but when I'm going in to do an assessment, it's always the harder session. They like me a whole lot better the second time, but I have to get some information.
Right,
So
right. Yeah.
I think what we want to do next time, we're going to talk about caregiver support, okay? And I want to end with this Chinese proverb, because we gave a lot of information today, so go to the website.
Absolutely.
And it is, learning is a treasure which accompanies its owner everywhere. So
Very good.
we
That's
learned a few
good
facts
one.
today, didn't we?
That's a good
Okay.
one. Very good.
Thanks, Janelle.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. Now, at the end, please watch the screen and you'll see the websites that you can go to for more information about what was discussed today. We'll be here next week. We hope you'll come back and join us. Now, go and make it a great day.